Hi everyone, welcome to Sunday Night Thrive. This week we're here with Dr. Margaret Paul. She's the author of Inner Bonding as well as Diet for Divine Connection, her new book, which was just released a few weeks ago. And welcome to the show, Margaret.
Thank you very much.
Could you tell us a little bit about your new book to get started?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. This is a book that really will teach people how to have at-will access to their higher source of love and wisdom. And I think most people would love to know that they're not alone, that they're always being guided, but they don't know how to have that two-way communication. And so the first half of the book talks about, well, it's about frequency. It's about how high we can keep the vibrancy of our energy. And so the first half of the book has to do with our physical body. And you know what's happened in our culture is that there's so much junk in the food that people don't realize that it's lowered their vibrancy. That's why there's so much illness going on and anxiety and depression. So much of it is on the physical level. And so I go very deeply into what's happening with the food and what needs to happen for people to raise their frequency on the physical level. But the problem is that even if people know this and they know what it means to eat well, they've got a lot of stuff in the way of that because, you know, food and alcohol and drugs and all that are used, as you know, very addictively by people because they don't know how to manage their feelings. You know, they get anxious, they get depressed, they get angry, they get lonely, they feel helpless over situations, they get heartbroken, they feel shame, they feel guilt, they feel jealous. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to learn from their feelings. They don't know how to lovingly manage their feelings, which is why so many people are on medication for their anxiety and depression because, you know, just take a pill, put a lid on it, don't deal with it. Well, you know, that has its own side effects as well. And a lot of recent research has shown that when people take medication and they eat junk food, it disrupts the gut flora, the microbiome, and that toxicity that it creates goes right up into the brain. It's just like if you drink alcohol, you know it goes right up into your brain. Well, the toxicity from food and from medications goes into your brain, and that toxicity itself creates the anxiety and the depression. And so it becomes a vicious circle, and people have no idea what else to do. You know, the medication isn't working really well for them. They're stuck, feeling really badly. Well, my book really addresses all of this. It addresses the anxiety and the depression on the physical level and on the emotional level. So the first part of the book is dealing with the physical level of what keeps our frequency too low to access our higher guidance at will. And the second part is the inner bonding process, because this is what people need in order to be motivated to take care of themselves physically. If they don't value themselves, if they think they're not good enough, which so many people have been brought up to have these false beliefs that they're just not good enough, then why would they be motivated to take care of themselves? We take care of what we value.
And I know you have an upcoming workshop at the retreat center, the Inner Bonding Workshop. And could you tell us a little about this core inner bonding process? What is it? What does it mean?
Yeah, it's really an amazing process that we've been evolving for the last 34 years. It's a process. See, I was working as a traditional psychotherapist for 17 years. I did not like what was happening with that. I just did not see people really healing on a deep level. And I didn't see people, pardon me?
Oh, what were you seeing, if I can ask?
Well, you know, people would feel better after a session, but they, you know, if something would happen in their lives, they didn't know how to deal with it. They had to keep coming in and trying to get help, but they didn't learn a process that they could use at any time. And so I started to pray for a process that would really go deep in terms of healing, that people could learn to do. and help themselves so they wouldn't always have to run to somebody if they were feeling badly. Well, that's when I met the co-creator of Inner Bonding, Dr. Erica Chopich. She had half the process. I had half the process. Of course, we had to meet. Spirit made sure we met, and we put it together, and it's been evolving all this time. And now it's a worldwide process. It's become so amazing. I am so thrilled with this process. It's been completely life-changing for me in my life. It's completely different than it was before Inner Bonding. And I hear from people all over the world, even people I don't work with, who learn Inner Bonding on their own, and their lives are completely changing. And of course, my clients, I mean, they're just sometimes 1 or 2 sessions and everything changes for them.
And what are some of the results that you're hearing from clients, these people writing in from around the world? I'd be really interested to hear.
Well, one thing is that they really get a handle on their anxiety and their depression, and they learn what to do about it. They know what to do about it. And then they become motivated to take care of themselves on many levels, but especially physically with what they put in their bodies. And then they find that their addictions start to fall away. Like if they're addicted to sugar or to alcohol, I hear all the time, I haven't had a cigarette in 2 months, or I'm completely off sugar for the first time. I've tried so many times, but now I'm not even drawn to it. And the relationships are improving so much, because one of the things people don't realize is that they've never learned to take responsibility for their own feelings and how to truly love themselves. And this is what the inner bonding process is about, how to take 100% responsibility for your own feelings and how to learn to truly love yourself. In our society, we don't have role models for that. And so in order to know how to do it in any given moment, you got to have access to your higher guidance.
Wow.
You see, you got to know how to say, okay, what's loving to me right now? What's in my highest good right now? You got to know how to receive those answers. And so this is what inner bonding teaches, sorry.
No, please, that's beautiful. I was just going to ask, what does it mean to take 100% responsibility for our feelings? Like you're saying, it's a very new concept in our culture.
That's right. Okay, so let's say that you're angry and you're so convinced that your anger is because somebody else has been unloving to you. Somebody else has put you down, judged you, rejected you, pulled away from you. And of course, most people think, well, of course I'm angry. Look at what they're doing. But in the inner bonding process, what we teach is that the anger is really our inner self, which we can call our inner child or our soul or our essence, angry at us because we don't know how to take care of ourselves in the face of somebody else's unloving behavior. What we're doing is we're abandoning ourselves. So somebody gets angry and we get defensive and we explain and we give ourselves up and we shut down and we take it personally and we feel horrible, and then we blame the other person. Of course I feel this way because this is what you did. But what we teach is to turn it around and go inside and say to your inner self, how am I treating you? What am I telling you? How am I judging you? How am I abandoning you? How am I not being an advocate for you in the face of what somebody else is doing? That you're now angry at me. And that inner self might say, well, you're judging me all the time. You're putting me down just like that person. You don't stand up for me. You don't get me out of range when somebody is being mean. You let me get beat up by this person. You're not taking care of me. You ignore me. You don't even know I'm here. You go up in your head. You numb out with food. You don't even know I exist because you've done everything you can to numb out me, which is the feeling self. I'm the feeling self inside. And that feeling self is a source of enormous information. That feeling self lets us know whether we're loving ourselves or abandoning ourselves. And so if we're feeling angry, or we're feeling anxious or depressed, or guilty, or shamed, or empty, or alone, or jealous, these are all feelings that are saying, you're abandoning me. You're rejecting me, and I need you to pay attention to me. And when we feel peaceful and full and loved and valued, then we know we're loving ourselves, taking loving care of ourselves. But most people, they learn to completely disconnect from their bodies because we had to do that when we were growing up. There was a lot of pain for most people. And when we were little, who taught us how to handle pain? In fact, the people who should have taught us may have been hurting us. And so we learn to go up in our head. We learn to disconnect, dissociate from our feelings. We learn to think feelings were weak. We learn to think that we were bad if we were feeling our feelings. We're supposed to just be okay all the time. And so we learn to disconnect. With the inner bonding process, people learn to reconnect with their feelings. They learn how to learn what their feelings are telling them. They learn how to embrace their feelings with compassion rather than being judgmental towards themselves for their feelings. And so these feelings, they're here and they're speaking to us. And so taking responsibility means we don't move away from our feelings. We move towards them. We move inside. We move into an intention to learn. In the inner bonding process, there's only two intentions possible at any given moment. One is you want to learn about how you're treating yourself, what your false beliefs are, what's loving to you. The other intention is you want to protect against pain with some form of controlling behavior. So there's only the intention. There's only these two intentions. I either want to get love and avoid pain, or I want to learn to love myself and share my love with others. Because truly, unless we learn to fill ourselves with love, we don't have love to share with others. And this is one of the main problems that happens in relationships, is people get into relationships abandoning themselves. They feel empty. They feel alone. They feel unworthy, unlovable. And so they hope this other person is going to make them feel whole and okay. But the problem is we attract at our common level of self-abandonment. So if we're abandoning ourselves, this other person is also abandoning themselves, because someone who's truly loving themselves isn't going to be attracted to somebody who's abandoning and rejecting themselves. And so then these two people who are rejecting and abandoning themselves, feeling empty and alone and unworthy, they come together and they have these huge expectations that the other person is going to make them okay. But they can't. They're not making themselves okay. They're not loving themselves. When we don't love ourselves, we don't have love to share with somebody else. And so that relationship might be okay for a little bit, but it's going to falter. And then people think, oh, I got together with the wrong person. No, that's not the issue. You got together with the right person if you're both open to learning and learning to take responsibility for your feelings. You see, so this is vital for relationships, for people to learn to love themselves, which they're going to learn to do in this course. They're going to learn the 6 steps of inner bonding. They're going to learn what it means to love themselves physically, emotionally, spiritually, within relationships, organizationally, financially. They're going to learn what it means to truly show up for themselves. And that's what creates the sense of fullness and peace inside.
Beautiful. Oftentimes in relationships, there is that, you could say, the honeymoon phase where it feels very nice and people feel connected.
Right.
And then, like you're saying, there's that, it starts to falter. And
Right.
what is that from this viewpoint? What's going on there?
Well, see, at the beginning, people are on their best behavior. But people come into relationships, if they're not loving themselves, they come in with 2 major fears. One is the fear of rejection, and the other is the fear of losing themselves, of being controlled and engulfed. So fear of losing yourself, fear of losing the other. So at the beginning, you know, people are on their best behavior. They're acting the way they think they need to act. But when they're not taking care of their own feelings, what happens is that these fears get activated. See, we all have a programmed part of us. You can call it the ego. We call it the wounded self. And this is a part that's programmed into our lower brain. It's in the fight or flight mechanism. And we all develop this as part of our survival. And this part of us is filled with a lot of fears and false beliefs. So let's say two people get together and they're having a great time and they're having great sex and really, enjoying each other. But then let's say one day the husband is late coming home from work. And then maybe the next day he's late coming home from work. And the woman says, well, what's going on? And he says, oh, I just had a lot of work to do. Well, now she's getting triggered into her fear of rejection. And that wounded self starts to say, uh-oh, he's losing interest in me. He's finding out I'm not good enough. Maybe he's met somebody else. She starts to get scared. And when she gets scared, she starts to act out with her programmed ways of trying to control. So she may start to nag at him. It's not okay for you to always coming home late. And you didn't used to come home late. And what's really going on there? Well, now his fear of being controlled gets triggered. And he starts to feel trapped because now she's kind of, she's nagging him. Her tone of voice isn't loving. She's not open to learning. She's just trying to control him. And his fear is one of being controlled, because most people have both these fears. I'm going to be controlled or I'm going to lose the person. Well, what he does when his fear of being controlled gets activated is he starts to shut down. That's his way of not being controlled. Well, the more he shuts down, what do you think she does? She starts to get angry. And the more angry she gets, the more he shuts down. Well, pretty soon, all the love that was there, it's gone. And that's when these people come in and they start to work with me. And she says, in typical blaming fashion, well, if he wouldn't shut down, I wouldn't be angry. And he says, in typical blaming fashion, well, if she weren't angry, I wouldn't be shut down. And in a sense, they're both right, but they're both wrong, because they came in with these fears and they came in with their learned ways of protecting themselves, their learned ways of trying to control, which inevitably will get activated in any relationship. So if these people don't know how to take responsibility for their feelings, if she doesn't know how to go in and say, I'm wondering what I'm telling myself that's causing me to be scared. Oh, I'm telling myself he's met somebody else. Is that true? Do I really know that? Or maybe I'm just making this up and scaring myself, because inside she's feeling scared. She's feeling insecure. He's actually not doing anything to do that. He probably is overworked right then. But she's telling herself these things, scaring herself, having no idea that she's the one doing it. And so she has no idea how to take responsibility for her feelings, so she's blaming him. She gets angry. He has no idea how to take care of himself in the face of her anger. He has no idea how to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? He doesn't know about moving into an intention to learn. He doesn't know to say, honey, you seem really upset. I'd really like to understand what are you telling yourself? What's going on here? That you're nagging at me, you're being angry with me. No, he doesn't know how to do that. And so he puts up the wall because he's afraid of being controlled. He doesn't want to give himself up. So all he knows to do is put up the wall. And then she doesn't know to move into an intention to learn. She doesn't know to say to him, we've become distant and there must be a good reason. And I'd like to understand what you see going on between us. She doesn't know to do this because there's been no role modeling for that. I didn't know how to do this until I started to practice inner bonding. I had no idea. I did the same thing everybody else was doing. But once these people start to understand how to take responsibility for their own feelings, how to go in and learn from them, how to access their higher guidance regarding what's loving to themselves, how to move into an intention to learn with themselves and with each other, magically, their relationship starts to improve. That's what happens when I work with people.
It sounds really beautiful. One thing you've mentioned a few times is this intention to learn, being open to learning. What is the significance of that? Are we really so close to learning in our fight or flight state?
Yes, we're very close because we've learned from childhood that we need to avoid pain at all costs because it overwhelms us. We don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to manage it. And that's why I said so many people are on medication. They just don't know what to do with their pain. They don't recognize, like let's say you're slicing bread and you cut your finger. You need that pain, don't you? That
Sure.
pain is telling you something, that if you keep cutting, you're going to really hurt yourself. Now, if you had numbed your hand out before slicing the bread, you could really cut into your finger and really do harm. And so you need the pain because the pain is saying, stop, you're doing something that's hurting me. Okay? Our emotional pain is saying the same thing. You're doing something that's hurting me, or somebody else is doing something that's hurting me. And you need to tune in. You need to take care of me. You need to learn. But because we didn't have the role modeling, and because we've had so much junk food and medication and alcohol and all this stuff, our vibrancy, our frequency is too low to access the information that we need in order to love ourselves.
And it sounds like
And I try for, yeah.
Please
Go ahead.
Well,
No, go ahead.
Like you're saying it's there that we can connect with it. It's not like learning, like going and reading a bunch of books.
No.
Connecting with something that's available. Could you share?
Yes. You see, our feelings when we show up with, as what we call in inner bonding as a loving adult. A loving adult is who we are when we're open to learning and we're connected with our higher love and wisdom. So, like if you're with a child and the child is upset, and you say to the child, well, what's the matter now? The child is not going to feel safe to tell you, right? They'll say nothing. Or, you say, oh, well, here you are upset again. Here's a cookie. Go sit in front of the TV. Well, the child is not going to be helped by that. It's the same thing on the inner level. If we approach our feelings like, well, this is just going on and on. This should stop. What's going on? There is no way that our inner self is going to let us in. But if we're a loving adult and we're compassionate and we're open to learning rather than trying to control something, eating the cookie and sitting in the front of the TV is a way to avoid. That's a way to control. But if we're a loving adult and we're compassionate and we say to our inner feeling self, honey, what's happening? Is there some way I'm treating you? Is there something that's going on with somebody else that's causing this pain? I'm here for you. I really want to know. We're going to start to learn a lot about how we're treating ourselves. Or if we're saying, we're with this person right now, but you're feeling scared and agitated. Would you please tell me what you're picking up? Because we have intuition that most people have learned to avoid. And it's like when I was little and I was picking up things from people, and my mother would say, go hug Uncle Joe. And in my stomach, hugging Uncle Joe made me sick. I was not allowed to honor my feelings. Well, this is teaching people to honor so that if they're with somebody and the energy feels really bad, we learn to trust it and we learn to take care of it. And this is a lot of what inner bonding is about. Learning to trust our inner guidance and learning to trust our higher guidance so that we become our own guru. We access that information, which is absolutely amazing when we're open to learning, when we really want to know. But if our goal is just to avoid pain, which is what we learn to do, there's no learning. our frequency is too low. We can't access that information when the intention is to protect and avoid and control. We access it only when we're open to learning about what's loving to ourselves, about our false beliefs, about the truth, and about loving action towards ourselves and with others. So it's vital. The intention to learn is basic to the inner bonding process.
And when we do open up with that intention to learn, and we get in touch with our inner guidance, that feeling self, and the higher guidance, what are some of the common messages that people start to receive? If there is anything common, or is it very individualized?
No, actually, it's quite common. Very often when they go inside, their inner self, inner child, whatever you want to call that feeling part, is going to say things like, you ignore me all the time. You don't even know I'm in here. You ignore my feelings. You don't listen to me. You make other people's feelings way more important than mine. Other people come first, and they always have. Or you're putting a lot of pressure on me. You're telling me I have to be perfect. You're judging me as not being good enough all the time. Of course I'm anxious. Of course I'm depressed. What do you expect when you're treating me this way? You're telling me that I have to do everything right so that so-and-so will think I'm okay. You're rejecting me all the time. You don't think I'm okay. You don't treat me like I'm okay. You're always telling me that unless this person or that person or this person likes me, I'm not okay. You're telling me I have to perform for them. I have to achieve. I have to get A's. I have to make this amount of money. I have to have this or that in order to be okay. I have to look a certain way. You don't know me at all. You don't know who I am. You don't know that I am this incredible, beautiful soul within you. You don't even know I exist. These are some of the things that people tune into. This is very important.
That's very profound.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of the viewers can relate to some of these notions as things that, the chatter in the mind that we try to turn off.
Yeah, because, many of our parents treated us like we weren't good enough, like we had to be perfect, like we had to perform, that their love was conditional on how we looked or how many A's we got or how many friends we had or whatever. And so we absorbed all of that. And then we start to treat ourselves the way we were treated by our parents or caregivers or peers or siblings or the church or whoever. And we just perpetuate the abuse. Whether it's physical, treating ourselves badly, emotional, really judging ourselves, we perpetuate it. Then we wonder why we feel so bad.
And the process sounds so valuable. Are there obstacles that you encounter with people getting them started? Say people want
yes.
but
Yes. People go into resistance. The wounded part of us wants to keep the status quo. The wounded part believes, well, I've kept you alive this long. Why rock the boat?
Yep.
And so the wounded part says, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Let's just keep the status quo. And also what happens is that if people grew up with parents who were very controlling, they learn to be very resistant. That fear of being controlled is very, very big. And so they integrate that into their ego wounded self. And so they often have one part that's like the controlling parent. You better do this, you got to do that. Well, get up early, exercise, don't eat any sugar, stop drinking, nagging, telling you what to do. Well, then they have another part inside that's learned to resist. You can't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me. I don't have to do what you say. So it creates this inner power struggle where they get immobilized. And this happens with a lot of people. They just get immobilized. They say, yeah, I want to eat well, but, I wake up and I say, today I'm not going to have any sugar. And before I know it, I'm eating the cupcake. Yep. What's going on here? What's going on is that these wounded parts of themselves, which are many different ages inside, are in charge. And they've got this power struggle going on. Well, until they develop the loving adult, which is what happens when you practice inner bonding. Inner bonding is like the workout for the loving adult. One of the things that recent research shows is that our brains have neuroplasticity, which means we can always learn. We can always develop new neural pathways. Well, we've got like railroad tracks in our lower brain, you know, for judging ourselves, for resistance, for trying to control ourselves and others. With the practice of the 6 steps of inner bonding, you develop new neural pathways in your higher brain, your prefrontal cortex. The more you practice the 6 steps, and they're very definitive, and they're not that hard to learn, but they take practice. The more you practice them, the more you develop your loving adult self. So whereas I used to be addicted to sugar, and I used to be addicted to anger, and a whole lot of things, as I practice inner bonding and developed these new neural pathways, I don't have any of those anymore because I don't automatically go to my lower brain. I now automatically go to my higher brain. And so now, if somebody brings in, you know, yummy sugar stuff, which I used to eat all the time, my higher brain says, you know, I love you so much. And I know if I eat this, I'm going to cut you off from our guidance. I love being connected at will to my higher guidance. And I know if I eat this, my vibrancy, my health, everything is going to tank. So I have no problem not eating it. I'm not even tempted because it's not loving to me and my adult is in charge. And one of the things that's, see, here's a little interesting story. I was a sickly child and I just hated being sick. And so in my early 20s, I started reading everything I could about health. And I threw out everything in my kitchen, and there was one little health food store in LA at that time. And so I started eating all organic, all fresh. I was the health food nut. Okay, that was 56 years ago. I'm 78 now. I have unbelievable health. I have unbelievable energy. I have no arthritis. I have no brain things, you know, loss of memory, anything like that going on. But I've been doing this for 56 years. So not only have I achieved this extraordinary health and energy by eating well, but one of the things that became very important to me was this connection with spirit. And so even though I was eating really well, I still couldn't have it. Now I would have it here and there, but I didn't have it at will. Then inner bonding came in. Spirit brought us inner bonding. And I realized, wow, the intention to learn is such a huge key. And so I started practicing being open to learning, practicing inner bonding. All of a sudden, I have this, whoa, this connection, it's there. I can access, I ask questions, I'm getting answers. It was like amazing. So I thought, oh, okay, it's about the intention to learn. And I start working with my clients, getting them to open to learning. They still can't access. And I finally put it together that it was both how I was eating and the intention to learn that kept my frequency high enough to access my guidance at will. And that's when I realized I had to write this book. This is the new book, Diet for Divine Connection. And it says beyond junk foods and junk thoughts to at-will spiritual connection. That's what it's about, because that's what I finally put together. Wow, it's about frequency. And because I had been eating so well for so long, once I opened to learning, it was just there.
And would you recommend people start with that book or your first book, Inner Bonding?
Well, Inner Bonding actually wasn't my first book. My first book was a much older one. The one that was a huge seller was called Do I Have to Give It Me to Be Loved by You? But if they're going to come to the workshop, I think the Diet for Divine Connection, that's the most recent one. And that's the one that I think would be most helpful before they come to the work. They don't have to read it. I mean, they're going to get what they need. But it's, you know, the more you learn, the deeper you go in any experience you have. So if people come having read it, they're just going to get a deeper experience. But if they don't have time, on our website, we have a free inner bonding course that's much shorter. That will help them as well. But, you know, sometimes people just don't like to read, and that's okay. They can just bring themselves.
And for people joining us live, you'll find a link to both that inner bonding workshop online, as well as to the book in the chat section and in the comments.
Great.
And Margaret, since there is this kind of beautiful opportunity to experience the work in person, could you share about kind of what happens in the in-person workshop and why that's so special? And we've heard great things from participants. Maybe you could also share from your side.
Yeah, well, see, the workshop is a combination. I'll be doing some lecturing, but it's people go into small groups. They do processes. They're actually learning the process. They're at the beginning. They're learning who the wounded self is. Who are they as a wounded self? Who are they as their inner self, their true self? Who are they as a loving adult? And I teach them how to connect with their higher source. And then they go through the 6 steps of inner bonding with exercises. There's questions, there's discussion. I work with a few people to show them what the process looks like.
So people are seeing it in real life.
Yeah, they see it in real life. They get a real life experience. And what so many people say, even people who have been doing inner bonding for a long time, is that there's nothing like getting a real life experience. Plus, because I've been doing this for so long, they get the role modeling. You know, I'm very open about what I've been through. And so they hear what I've been through, and they hear what my life is like now, and they see, you know, the amount of energy that I actually have and how easy it is for me to connect. And they get inspired to, you know, to start to practice the process for themselves. So many people, if people go to our website and they look under the testimonials for workshops, so many people say, I've been reading books, I've been attending workshops, I've had therapy for 20 years, 30 years. This is the first time I understand why I've been suffering and what to do about it.
Wow. Yeah. And that's so beautiful what you said about role modeling. I feel it's underappreciated in our culture, the value of a lived experience with someone who is, you know, immersed and is living what they're, you know, sharing with others.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know about you, but I've been to a lot of people, and I'm often disappointed. And a lot of people say to me, well, I thought this person was going to really be great, but, you know, they're in their ego. They're just trying to sell something. They're not living what they're teaching, and it's disappointing. I've been doing this for so long, and I've worked really hard to live what I teach. And really, it took me a long time before I felt ready to come out. And this is why, see, I hadn't written a book in a long time.
You saw that, yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't written a book, and that was one of the reasons why, because I knew I needed to be in that place. I needed to know that it works. I needed to be living it in my own life before I could feel good about really putting it out there. And now, I mean, I'm blown away. I am so grateful for my life at this point. And not only am I so grateful for the health and vitality I have, but because I've been doing this, I am able to manifest. You know, there's so much talk about how to manifest, but people don't realize that they need to be in a high frequency. They need to be loving themselves. They need to be in connection with themselves and their guidance in order to manifest their dreams. And so many people that I work with, they don't even know what their dreams are. They don't know what their passion is. They don't know what their purpose is. They don't know how to find it out. They're unhappy in their jobs, but they don't know what else to do. We have a blueprint in our soul. Every single person has a blueprint for why they came to the planet, for what they're here to offer, for what would bring them joy to offer. But That inner self isn't going to tell them that blueprint until they feel loved, until they know that there's a loving adult there who's going to take loving action on what they tell them. And so as they learn and practice inner bonding, and I've seen this with thousands of people that I work with, they get in touch with why they're on the planet. They get in touch with what would really bring them joy to offer. And that's very, very exciting, because that's why we're here. We're here to evolve in our ability to love ourselves and to love others. And we're here to offer our love in our own unique way. We each have a lot of gifts inside that have been squashed down, that have been judged, that we don't know about. Through inner bonding, we learn about these gifts. We learn about why we're here and what we want to offer. And when people tap into that, it brings them enormous joy. I'm very fortunate in that I learned many years ago about what I love to do. Obviously, I love what I do, and I'm always going to do it. I have no intention of retiring. I can't even think about that, because that would sound really boring to me.
It's amazing how much energy you have.
Oh, I do. And really, I'm very, very busy. I work a lot, but I love it. I love it. And so I have no desire to stop.
And just so people know, we're very grateful to Margaret for making the time for this webinar with us. We worked with her schedule, and we're really glad that she could carve out time for this session with all of us.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it, and I'm really looking forward to meeting everybody who's coming to the workshop. And I really encourage people who haven't been to one to come to this workshop. You will not regret it. It would be a very loving action for yourself to bring yourself to this workshop.
And before we wind up, do we have time for a short kind of inner reflection experience with you?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing that people need to do is just take some deep breaths. Take some deep breaths and use your breath to get you out of your head and inside your body. Follow your breath as you go in. And as you go in, scan your body for any physical sensations, any tightness, any tension, any emptiness, numbness, nothingness. Whatever is in there is fine. If you're feeling great, that's fine too. That's wonderful. But tune into any physical sensations, because emotions show up as physical sensations. And breathe into them. Don't move away from them. Breathe into those feelings. Get present. Imagine that those feelings are an inner child. And that inner child is letting you know that there's something to attend to. Even if there's just a little bit of tension, or a little bit of numbness or emptiness, or a little bit of anxiety, just breathe into it and get present and have some compassion. No judgment for the feeling. And now take a moment to notice if there's something you're telling yourself right now, some way you're treating yourself right now that might be causing a little bit of stress, a little bit of aloneness, a little bit of emptiness. Just notice it without judgment. No judgment. And just start to make a connection between how you're treating yourself, what you're telling yourself, and how you end up feeling inside. Just start to notice. You don't even have to do anything about it, but just become aware. And breathe that in. Okay, so that's just a very brief introduction to step 1 and 2 of inner bonding.
Mm-hmm.
it's much more in depth when we go into it, but that's just a very brief introduction of tuning in and noticing what's going on.
Beautiful. We're really looking forward to the workshop with you. You'll find a link to the workshop in the chat box and in the comments section. So please feel free to check that out, learn a little more, and clear up your calendar dates. And thank you again, Margaret, for the time with us and for sharing so openly.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Andrew.
And wishing everyone a thriving week ahead. Bye now.
Bye-bye.